Hi, my name is Rosevelt Powell. I participated in a Be the Bridge group that was uh, organized and moderated by Megan Wilson and Monique Welch back in the fall. I think they did a good job of handling the group. Um, uh, my thoughts on Be the Bridge are positive. I think anything that's done to reconcile the gaps and racial division in this country is a positive. And there are a lot of things that have been done over the years, and I think one thing I expressed to the group is that most of this has been done in small steps. There's no big step that I'm aware of that's going to completely change the lay of the land the way it is now as far as the racial divide. But every little bit helps, and the way I look at Be the Bridge, it's another small step. I mean, I think there were some positive things that came out of it. Um, it's uh, uh, more faith based, and I think if you're a person of faith, um, there is that need to look at people as equals. Unfortunately, in our society, this is not necessarily the case. So I think Be the Bridge helped some folks look at it a little differently. Um, uh, we're all products of our environment, our families, our relationships, and you look at the groups of folks, look at black folks, look at white folks, and it's different. Um, First, white folks pretty much live in their own bubble, uh, and they can survive in it, and there's reasons for that. They're the ones that are perceived to be in control and power, and in some respects entitled to, at least in their minds, to the positions that they have. So there is no need for interaction with other groups. On the other hand, black folks, there is a need for interaction, and they're not in control. This country is was based on slavery early on, and at the end of slavery, there were other factors that really affected the black population. But the thing I'll say about the black population is that I think in general they have a better understanding of the entire situation. They understand white folks, they understand black folks. Whereas on the other hand, white folks don't have a good understanding of what motivates in black folks and the situation that they're pretty much locked in. Um, and a lot of this is because of history. I think one thing that came out in our sessions is really the way history has affected what people know. Our history has been filtered to the point where the black experience is really not covered. It's not covered truthfully. Things like lynching and race riots and the true effect of slavery, those things aren't really covered in our history. So white folks, at least today, don't have a good feeling for how black folks are actually treated, and the things that they've had to go through. And in reality, because they live in their bubble, there's no need for them to understand that. Whereas on the other hand, black folks are pretty much aware of the history. and there's a need to know the history and how to interact with black folks because for most black folks, their livelihood, their economic well-being, and those kind of things rely on a relationship with a white person because they basically are in charge of things. For example, I know we talked about some of the killings of unarmed black folks, and everybody was just astonished and amazed that these things are happening. Well, they've been happening for a long time, and always when you bring them up, people are astonished. But the things that are necessary to change those kind of things, it appears that people are not willing to do for whatever reasons. And there's been major events. One thing we talked about specifically was the riots in Tulsa back in the 1920s, and how a complete black community, viable black community, I think that back in those days it was referred to as the Black Wall Street, was totally wiped out by white folks. They even used planes in that effort, And from the numbers I've seen, there was approximately 300 people killed, in that particular riot, and there was close to 1,000 that were injured, and a complete neighborhood that was pretty much a black neighborhood was wiped out because somebody said that some black man had attempted to rape a white woman. And it was just hard to believe. But it was an excuse. It was an excuse for going in and doing this. But the important thing about this is that it's not reflected in the history books. The lynchings that have occurred over the years aren't reflected in the history books. So it doesn't give white folks really the opportunity to understand basically where black folks are coming from. And it's a problem. And but again, when you say these things, people are amazed and they're astonished. And I think that's a good thing, the awareness. But then the next step, the lamenting is done there. There's regret, there's sorrow. But the next steps, how do you change things? How do you make things better? How do you improve relationships? And that's where the problem comes in. We're more than willing to help the needy, take food down to the hungry and provide clothes to the people that really need them. But there's a deeper problem. There's a deeper problem than that. All that does is, that doesn't, doing those things for the needy doesn't solve the problem. It helps, don't get me wrong. There's people that need help. And it helps those people, but it doesn't solve the problem. The problem is a system that's geared towards limiting the opportunity that black folks have. I'm a businessman in the Atlanta area, and it's difficult. It's without the programs that they've had in the Atlanta area to promote black businesses. I question whether or not some of the significant businesses, black businesses in the area, would even exist, because there is an unwillingness to really do business with black businesses for whatever reason. Sometimes I think it's this macho attitude that some white men have that first they're entitled, that they're in charge, and they have power that they don't want to relinquish. If I get some business from somewhere, that means there's some white firm or some other firm that's not getting that business, and I think that's part of the problem. And there are things that can be done. And I mentioned this in our sessions, that can be done to improve the situation. you got to look a little broader than just handouts. You've got to look at, how do you create opportunities so people can help themselves, and basically we're not doing that. You look at some of the things that have been happening recently, and it seems like everything is geared towards limiting the opportunity that depressed folks have and that people of color have. One of the questions that came up in our session, well, what can we do? Well, there are a lot of things you can do if you're willing to do them. And then, and actually, there are a couple of people that say, well, we can do some things, but there are a lot of things we can't do. There are a lot of things you can do, but it takes a hell of a person and a big decision to do them. I look at Campus Church, for example, and their relationship with GAC. They spend a lot of money. They have huge budgets. They have budgets for paper and pencils and for maintenance of their equipment and for building new facilities. And I mentioned one thing they can do is make sure that black firms and black people get involved in doing work for them. And one of the things I always hear, well, we don't have qualified firms. But there are qualified people out there. If there aren't qualified firms, get somebody and start a firm to do something. I mean, there's IT work. There's all sorts of things. People maintain their networks. They buy their computers. Somebody maintains their computers. Both at Campus Church and at GAC. There's all sorts of ways to give people opportunities that don't have them now, and those are some of the ways to do it. Again, my feelings about Be the Bridge, I think it's a step in the right direction. But they had programs like this 50, 60 years ago. Back then, they were called awareness programs. Because black folks were starting to move into big businesses, and they wanted to make sure that the white supervisors and managers had a better feel for the black employees and how to deal with them. And from my experience, a lot of those programs backfired, mainly because some of the white supervisors and managers weren't willing to forego some of the things they've been doing as far as their power and those kind of things to accommodate black employees. And it was a difficult time, and it seems like now with Be the Bridge, we're almost doing the same thing, but again, every little bit helps, and I think Be the Bridge helps, but there's a bigger systemic problem in this country that affects race relations and affects opportunities for minorities and people of color. And those have to be addressed. And they can be addressed, with just some of the things that I mentioned. You can't totally change the attitudes of people, I think one of the participants in our group mentioned that, it's hard to talk to her family and friends about some of the things they were talking about in Be the Bridge because they were so locked in. She said they look at the Civil War as a states' rights effort. It had nothing to do with slavery. Well, it did have a lot to do with slavery. And this is where history has been bent and filtered. And that's based because the people that write history are the people that unfortunately share some of these beliefs. But we've got to tell the truth about what happened, the truth about how people have been affected, and the truth about what needs to be done to change things and reconcile to some extent this racial divide. It takes bold efforts, and unfortunately a lot of people aren't willing to take those kind of bold efforts. As a matter of fact, you look at some of the things now with some of the things they do here in Georgia as far as these laws that affect voting and some of the other things. It's really depressing because it seems like people are tending to move in the opposite direction rather in the direction of reconciliation for racial issues. And those are my thoughts on the total thing, Be the Bridge. Again, I want to say this one more time. I think Be the Bridge is a positive effort, but it's a small effort when you consider the things that really need to be done to make significant changes. Thanks.